I'm going to leave it wide open in regards to wide receivers, since you've got a piece of work out there that folks need to check out in regards to midseason grades. But, highlight a wide receiver, and then let us know, obviously, Roman Wilson's a guy with 9 receptions but couldn't make the trip against Nebraska, and what we know about him at this point.
Yeah, and 6 of those receptions came the week prior against Wisconsin when he kind of broke out there for 71 yards. I think 3 or 4 of those were for first downs. So he was key down the field for Michigan in that game. And they've been kind of searching for that guy ever since Ronnie Bell went down. Something we've talked about, Mark, almost each week because it's just so important. And Michigan still hasn't really found that guy who's the total go-to target. I like what they have there. Cornelius Johnson, Dalen Baldwin on the outside have been pretty solid. But you don't have that kind of game breaker type. And it looked like Ronnie Bell had taken that next step, in just 2 quarters of work before he got hurt there against Western Michigan. But Roman Wilson, there's some hope that, he'll be able to return in a couple weeks with a wrist or hand injury. He's actually posted a couple of videos because he's decently big on TikTok. And of course, the fans on our message board are all over those because he's hurt right now. And, you haven't seen his right hand in any of those videos. It's kind of being hidden a little bit. So it's something to keep an eye on. But no, I think that he was kind of the guy that was starting to step up, and it'll be interesting to see who else does. Cornelius Johnson right now is the most steady guy there on the outside, but I still think these receivers are having a little bit of a tough time creating separation, and that's going to be huge for this offense going forward when you play the Penn State, of the world, who have one of the best pass defenses in the country. You got to be able to get open, when there's nothing else there and you're not going to have a ton of time to throw with a good pass rush. So bigger challenges are ahead. And I think the receivers, them improving and them playing better are going to be a big part of Michigan, whether or not they can come out on top in some of these tough games that are coming up.
Folks, again, please like the video. It helps us build the channel. Subscribe right here at the Voice of College Football. Leave your comments below as well. Teams want to have an offensive line that's set. Basically, that's going to be the 5 guys, and then it may be some 1 or 2 that rotate in possibly, or the main backups. Michigan not quite as settled as they would like to be at this point.
Well, they were until, they just started to get banged up. Seemed like it was some stuff maybe in practice or during that Wisconsin game, which is always a physical team to play. That's a heck of a Wisconsin defensive line. Zach Zinter and Trevor Keegan, the right guard and left guard respectively, did not practice much coming into the Nebraska game. And then you see Zinter not start, but play a little bit in that first half. He went about 20 snaps before Jim Harbaugh said he just couldn't go anymore. Looked like an ankle for him. And then Trevor Keegan dealing with a bit of a shoulder injury. He did come in and out of that game. He was able to finish, but 5 different players played guard, and I think they acquitted themselves pretty nicely. Carson Barnhart played both sides at different times in that game. And I think the best thing you could say about some of the guys that came in, including Reese Atterbury, a second-year guy, is that you didn't notice them in there as much. Sometimes you just don't want to notice offensive linemen in pass protection. Like, if they got their head and they're turned around because they got beat and they're looking back, hoping that the quarterback doesn't get rocked. You don't want to see that. You don't want to see them, get blown up on a run play. And you didn't see that with these guys. So we'd been hearing about the depth that this Michigan offensive line has had throughout the offseason, coming into the season, even during the season when we hadn't seen it because they've been so settled. Now we're starting to see it, and it paid off. They did just enough in that Nebraska game to pull out the win. And, I don't think the offensive line was too big of a concern in that game. So this bye week, as I mentioned at the top, comes at a very good time for this Michigan team to rest up some of those bumps and bruises that you're always going to have. And then also for guys like Roman Wilson at wide receiver, Trevor Keegan at left guard, Zach Zinter at right guard, should be pretty healthy coming out on the other side of this bye. And other than Ronnie Bell, they haven't lost anybody for the season. So that's helped Michigan too, because I don't think this is a deep team, but they've got enough pieces right now that have emerged that are, putting them in contention for the Big Ten.
Clayton, on to the quarterback situation. So Cade McNamara throws his first pick of his career on Saturday night against Nebraska. He makes the throws that he needed to make. Sure, he missed a few, but made the throws. They've gone from where people were concerned a few weeks ago that they're running the ball 90% of the time. I'm exaggerating, but still, it's
a little bit, just a little bit,
just a little bit. Throwing like 10 or 11 passes a game. Well, ever since the Wisconsin game, they're throwing 250, 260 on the board in terms of passing yardage, threw for 3 touchdowns in that game, and more production in the passing game. And it was almost 50-50 in terms of pass run ratio against Nebraska. So they've opened things up and they're finding some plays downfield. So my question for you is your assessment of Cade McNamara's play. And secondly, unlike a lot of situations, we saw a classic example of it at Iowa on Saturday, where Penn State goes in for a huge game. They lose Sean Clifford, and their backup quarterback's completely incapable. It was just a complete drop off. And he could be a really good player someday, but he certainly was not prepared for that moment. Taquan Roberson. And so their offense was completely shut down. Well, Michigan's in a position you would think they'd be pretty comfortable with J.J. McCarthy. He's shown and he's played meaningful snaps and series against good teams. So your thoughts about McNamara's play, but also, shoot, they got Michigan State, Penn State, other capable teams coming. If there's a thought that J.J. McCarthy's maybe closer to taking over than he would be otherwise, if there's any kind of dip in play.
Yeah, I don't think it's quite, right where there's like a short leash on Cade McNamara by any stretch, but they like J.J. McCarthy. They like what he can do, and they're starting to put him in, as you saw a couple of weeks ago, in meaningful snaps, meaningful downs. He got in on the 6th snap of the game against Nebraska, and they're kind of using him more as like a read option runner because Cade McNamara isn't much of a running quarterback, and J.J. McCarthy has some of that athleticism with his legs. So I kind of like how they've used him. A couple times I've had a little, some gripes about the fact that you put JJ in for 2 straight run plays, then it's 3rd down, and then you're expecting your starter to trot back in. It's just kind of weird seeing a quarterback have to like run in and then like execute a 3rd down pass. But it hasn't really, hampered anything that Cade McNamara has done. So I don't think he's in jeopardy of losing the job, and he's really delivered the last 2 weeks in tough games against tough defenses, Wisconsin and Nebraska. You mentioned the interception that he threw. It was a bad one. I'd still like to get an explanation on that. Was it a miscommunication or what? Or if he just didn't see the guy. But as Jim Harbaugh said after the game, one of the biggest tests for a quarterback is the next drive. After throwing an interception, can you come down and lead the team down for points? And he did that. And Michigan's defense was struggling big time in that second half. It was, blown coverages, and it was pretty uncharacteristic from what we've seen of this unit over 6 games. But Michigan kept scoring points and did just enough. And it didn't hurt that you got a fumble at the end there to set him up for some points to win the game. But he's continued to lead this offense down for points. Drives that end in kicks, as we've talked about before on this show, are exactly what coaches are looking for. And look, this Michigan coaching staff had a lot of fire on it coming into the season, a lot of heat. They're not playing a guy that they don't think is giving them the best chance of winning. They need to win, and they need to win now. They understand that. They've done a good job of it so far. Cade McNamara is the starting quarterback of an undefeated team that has turned the ball over, I think, only 2 times. One of them was a pick by the 4th-string quarterback, Alan Bowman, late in the game against Wisconsin when they already had it wrapped up. So there's, a little bit of noise when you talk about J.J. McCarthy, and it's always going to be there because he was so highly touted and because we've seen flashes of brilliance from him early on in this season. But right now, Cade McNamara's job is pretty safe. He's playing good football, and I don't expect him to, just kind of hit a wall or anything. You mentioned some of the teams are going to play. If he got banged up or something, I think they'd feel more than comfortable with J.J. McCarthy to come in there. We got to talk to Matt Weiss, the quarterback's coach, a couple of weeks ago, and he said if J.J.'s in there and they need to, he has the full playbook at his disposal. So, it's not something like it'd be a watered-down offense for a true freshman or anything like that. He's certainly got the arm to, sling it around the yard, bring you back in a game if you had to, and for whatever reason McNamara isn't in the game. So they like what they have there, and Jim Harbaugh said this again this week, that they've learned from, the past mistakes of even last year where they didn't get their backup quarterback in enough. And then when they had to go to him, and Cade McNamara stepped up really well there at the end of the season, but you just didn't know what you were going to get because you didn't have experience. So they want to play J.J. McCarthy not only for the fact that, he's giving them a chance to win some games here using his legs. Again, adding an element to the offense that Cade McNamara doesn't bring, but they're also getting him experience for the potential injury to Cade McNamara, the potential struggle where they'd want to pull him out of the game, and the future years down the road, because I haven't talked to a single person around the program that doesn't believe that J.J. McCarthy is going to have a really, really bright future for this team. Right now, you're in a great spot, at quarterback. If you're Michigan, you don't have a first-round talent there. You have a guy who started 7 games, is still continuing to get better, and a really young guy who has a bright future. So you're in a pretty good spot.
Michigan's in a good spot as well. 6-0. Northwestern is next. They got a bye week to rest up and get ready for the Wildcats in the stretch drive in the Big Ten Eastern Division.